The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
I have to tell you something. I met in Rabbi Rattenberg's shul right here on Forshay. There's a Yid, he davens there at early minyan, 7 o'clock, 7:30 minyan. Rebbe Katz. So I met him. So Rebbe Katz says, I want to share something with you. You just see perspective. His parents come from Kloisenberger Chassidim, and they moved to Crown Heights. And he lived on New York Avenue. This is the 50s and 60s. And they moved to Borough Park. And he would daven in a Chassidish shtibel every Shabbos morning. A Chassidish shtibel. And he told me he would leave his house 10 to 8. And he would come to the shul 8 o'clock. It was a 10-minute walk Shabbos morning. They daven early, 8 o'clock. And he would go there. If you know the geography of Brooklyn a little bit, he would pass from New York Avenue, he would pass President Street. On President, between Brooklyn and New York, because the Lubavitcher Rebbe lived. The Rebbe would leave his house Shabbos morning 10 to 8 and go to shul, and he would be there 8. He would always leave his house Shabbos morning 10 to 8. So Ben Katz told me, he says, I was at Kloisenberg Ingel with the payas, but he would walk, and it happens to be he was also on time. So he always met the Rebbe coming out of the house. Nobody else was there. He was a little kid, and it was like his time with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. They would greet each other warmly. He says, as a kid, he was a Kloisenberger kid, but he felt really uplifted by it. It was like a private, intimate moment between the Lubavitcher Rebbe and this little boy Ben Sion. Years later, as the situation changed over there, so a few yeshiva boys would come to escort the Rebbe home and back just for safety reasons. So later in the 60s, these boys were there, and they see that the Rebbe comes out, and he's standing there, and they're greeting each other. So as the Rebbe started to walk to shul, these bochrim came over to him and started to scream at him. The Rebbe everyone overwhelms him day in and day out. He has a few seconds that he could be himself, walking out of his house and walking to shul. You have to stand there. You have to disturb him. You have to tell him good Shabbos. You have to get a smile from him. Just leave him alone. He never has 2 seconds for himself. Lazim tzuru. They started. They're screaming at him, don't do this again. Don't come back here. As they're screaming at him, they're older bochrim, and he's a little kid. And he told me I was overwhelmed and scared. And I see suddenly the Rebbe was already walking down President, turns around. And he walks back. He felt something or he heard something. And he walks back and he turns to the Bacham and he says, Was wilt er von him? What do you want from him? What happened? So they were very overwhelmed. They didn't think the Rebbe would come all the way back. So they said, we told him that he shouldn't disturb the Rebbe. When the Rebbe comes out of his house, he should let the Rebbe go alone. So Ben Sion says the Rebbe looked at him to find out if they're saying the truth. Like he looked. So he said, yeah, that's what they said. So the Rebbe looks at them and said, why are you mixing in? And this is not disturbing me. This is something I love and I cherish and I look forward to. And do not tell such a thing to him. And he walked away. He walked back to shul. The boys apologized. They meant well. They just apologized and they left. He tells me the next week, and the Rebbe told him, come here every Shabbos, please, come here every Shabbos, come back, don't listen to them. It's fine, I'm telling you to come back. He tells me the next week, he goes, and he felt uncomfortable because he realized what was going on. As he comes by, he sees the Rebbe came out and he was waiting for him. And he realized that the Rebbe realized that he may not want to come, or he may be scared, or he may run by. And maybe when the Rebbe comes out, he already passed by because he won't wait. So he says the Rebbe came out early that Shabbos and waited on the porch to make sure he was there. And he came down and they continued this tradition. This is what Rebbe Sion told me.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org